Hello everyone. I just want to look at some important topics in classroom management, and we're just going to walk through some just key elements of classroom management. So let's just pull up some Prezi here. We'll just bounce from one to one. One thing is the concept that we teach one another and we teach each other. When you're a school teacher and you have a classroom full of students, you need to remember that you are learning from them and they're learning from you. And the concept that you're there just to teach them doesn't really work. When we see a student have a disruption, we need to ask ourselves why that disruption is occurring. And we really need to become kind of like psychologists and find out what's going on. The teacher's behavior and the student's behavior have a adverse effect on one another. If you're having a bad day, then the students may feed off that. There's several examples that you can think of like that, but you need to remember that when you're dealing with classroom management, you as a teacher are learning from the students just like the students are learning from you. It's a very key element to that. Another big concept is the 70 to 80% rule, and you'll see this throughout research. When you lose the goodwill of an entire classroom, then you've lost 100% of the classroom. What you really want to do as a teacher is to minimize the disruptions and to really not alienate 70 to 80% of the classroom. So you want to keep over 80% of the classroom on your side. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's give an example. If you come into a classroom full of seniors and they are in their last year before they graduate and they're ready to get out, and you walk in there and say, it's my way or the highway, we're not going to talk unless you raise your hand, and you really crack the whip, and you start getting the feedback that 80% of the class is like, this is too much, this is too harsh, I don't like this, then you're losing you've lost 78% of the classroom. And that's going to be hard to do. So you really need to find a common ground. I'm not saying to compromise your principles. And it's also natural to get frustrated by some individuals in a class group. But you really need the cooperation of 70 to 80% of your students so that you can function as a teacher. Now there's several things that you can and cannot control in a classroom. You cannot control every aspect of a student. We can't make a student do anything or take a student anywhere unless, of course, he or she is either naturally cooperative. So if you tell students that you have to raise your hand, you really can't make them do that. So you need to remember that. You don't want students to just blindly obey teachers at any command they give. So what you have to ask yourself is, how can I more effectively control my students? In more appropriate and much more constructive, how can I be more effective as a teacher leader? You don't want to control them. You want to be able to lead them towards the right way. So what is the goal of classroom management? The goal of classroom management is to be able to prepare your students to learn in society. And that means you need to manage the classroom in a setting so that you can be organized and have a very good, productive learning style. But remember, we can't really make them do anything. And that's a key element to that. Like this class right here, yes, there's online components of it, but I can't make you come to class. I can't make you watch these videos if you don't want to. There has to be a desire. So we'll have to address what if a student doesn't want to do anything, then we have to address that later. One thing we need to make sure we do is build relationship. The positive relationships we develop with our students, we will remember for a long time after they have forgotten the history of all that we've taught. You want the positive relationships. Think about your teachers that you had a long time ago. You think about the way they taught, you think about the way they functioned, but you don't remember the lectures they did on January the 8th. You don't remember what they taught You just remember that teacher, and you see that teacher in the mall, and you say, Mr. Smith, he was a good teacher, or Mr. Smith, he was mean, he didn't listen, he did me wrong. But what you want is, you really want to build strong relationships. Tone is very important. Now, I'm not saying we need to be their friends, but you need to be able to have a relationship with the student, a positive relationship. One thing you need to always ask yourself is, how would the student have felt in that situation? You really want to put yourself in their situation. You also need to have a joy of teaching. Now, that many people say, well, I think I'll be a good teacher, or I know I'm going to be a good teacher. But can you be a good teacher knowing that some students are not going to want to learn? One thing we see is, as a brand new teacher, you get a new school year. And as you stand in your classroom, before your school starts, you'll have a day where it's usually a teacher development day. And you stand there and all the desks are empty and the students aren't there, obviously. And it's like a teacher development day. And you get to stand in front of your class and you go, okay, tomorrow I'm going to have 30 students in this classroom. I'm going to have 130 students throughout the day. I'm going to be ready for this. I'm going to start. This is a new year. This is going to be great. And you get that rebirth, that great moment where you get to experience, this is going to be a new year. This is a new start. And most teachers can remember their very first class, even the very first day. I remember the first day I came back and slept because I was so tired. It's such a long day. You have so much that you can do that first day. It's the blank slate, the tabula rasa, the idea that everything is beginning new. So that's one good thing we have as being a teacher, is if you lose control of a classroom, you can always start new the next year. And that's one of the good things about being a teacher. During the first part of the year, you usually have the establishment phase. That's a crucial time in the development of the class. You get to learn the group dynamics. You get to begin everything new. You tell the students what they should expect in class. You tell the students about the procedures. We're going to come in. Well, you're not dismissed till the bell rings. You're going to have cues. You're going to have, don't raise your hand if you need to go to the restroom. And you're going to establish all of this. Now, some teachers will establish a harsh tone. Some teachers forget the establishment phase and then they try to catch up and try to establish later. But that establishment phase is very important. You may want to say, for example, you can say, everyone here is an individual. We have our own feelings, our needs, our concerns. I'm here to help you. As we want others to think about ourselves, we need to also think about the feelings that other people have at the time. So we need to make sure that we establish a very good phase for the students. Now, you can do this by establishing behavior agreements. Some teachers will get their students together and they'll say, okay, we need to all come to an agreement on how we need to act in class. And if this doesn't work, then we're going to do this or we're going to do that. But you can do a classroom-based agreement where you'll all get together, or you can do what some teachers say, this is the way it's going to be, and these are my rules. But you have to have key elements to a behavior, and that's going to be up to you. How do you visualize your classroom functioning? So think about that. Common rights. What do you want the students to have? How do you want the students to function? How do you want your class to act? Some teachers want their class to be very disciplined. They don't want the students to talk out of turn, and that everything has to be micro-controlled. That does work to a point, and it may work if that's your style, but it depends on if it's your style. And you need to find your style. Are you going to want the students to be more relaxed? Are they going to enjoy it? Also, what time of the day is some of the classes? For example, if you've got seniors or if you got juniors and they're taking an advanced class, they're taking physics or they're taking chemistry in second period, and then they've got your class third period, mentally they might be a little drained coming off that very high-level AP course, and there you are teaching Shakespeare, you're teaching lit. Now, you may want to keep them at a high level, or you may want to be a little more relaxed. Also, if you have a very smart class and they don't really have many discipline problems, then you don't have to worry about students acting up and going crazy. So you may want to have fun with that. Or you may have a very smart class and you may want to do higher level material. That's up to you. But remember that the rules protect the rights and encourage responsibility. That's a key thing, is we want our students to be responsible. We want our students to be responsible. And when we go to Facebook and we go to Walmart and we see irresponsible behavior, irresponsible comments, we really want that means they were not educated properly. We want our students to understand responsibility and we understand rules. Because after all, what is prison? Prison is just, you did not follow the rules, so you're going into a timeout. Well, they'll say, well, I didn't know the rules. Well, that's what we're trying to teach that in school. In school, you don't go to prison, you go to detention. And when you're an adult, you go to prison. See, so it's school is one of the last bastions of our establishment before they become adults. Now, there are consequences. Everyone has consequences. And students need to know that consequences follow inappropriate and irresponsible behavior. Consequences are related to rules and rights. Students will need to understand that when a rule is broken, in effect, a right is affected or even abused. Now, this is very clear in football and basketball and soccer. When someone does something wrong, you call a foul, or you put a technical, or you can eject them. Those are the rules and the consequences. In society, when you get older and you fail to do something, if you speed, you'll get a ticket. If you get a DUI, you'll get arrested. And there's fines and there's fees and elements of that. In school, once again, it's that last step before you become an adult. And there are consequences, but the consequences aren't to the extreme of going to jail, hopefully. If someone gets in a fight in the old days, they would get a paddling, or they'd get suspension, and then they would come back. In some schools, they would send them straight to prison, and that's when the federal government steps in and goes, you can't do that. And that was one of the big elements of some lawsuits recently, is the federal government said that the schools were sending students straight to prison. And they, especially they were saying minority students were being sent straight to prison. And that wasn't fair. They called it a pipeline straight to prison. Well, we don't want our schools to do that. We want our schools to educate our students of the consequences. And students can lose their right to be part of the learning community for a short period of time. So we want our consequences to be good, but we also want to make sure our consequences have an effect. You did something against our rules, and you've affected somebody. When you've you've spoken out of turn, you've caused a disruption, you're hurting other people's right to learn. You've come in late, you've disrupted the class, you've hurt people's rights to learn. You're not doing your work, you're hurting your right to learn. Consequences are very critical. One key thing that we always forget about is teacher confidence. As a teacher, you need to have confidence, and students feed off of that. Teachers who are nervous, who are concerned, students see that, and they go, okay, this person is concerned. I'll just give an example. There was a professor who was a genius in science, and they hired him at a community college, and he stood there and he just kept his head down and would read lecture notes for an hour. And people were like, this guy, he doesn't have any confidence. And it took years for him to gain his confidence. So you really want confidence when you begin. And that's hard to do. And many people say it's called relaxed behavior. I was nervous the first time I taught college classes because I was young at the time. And you start going, wait, I'm nervous about this one. But as a teacher, you need to have good body language, posture. Communication appears confidence. You don't need to be my way or the highway, but you just need to be comfortable and confident in your setting. If you feel confident, the pupils or the students are noticeably more responsive. And this in turn reinforces his own assurance. So practice this on your own. And this is a weakness that many teachers have. Practice looking someone in the eye. Practice making statements that are factual. Today we are going to learn this because this is important. Being able to make factual comments is very important. When you act nervous, then you end up not being able to convey what you need to convey in a positive manner. Now, college gives me a leeway. When you're in college, and all of y'all are students in college, and you've signed up and you're paid a large amount of money to take classes, then I can show a little bit of weakness. And you're like, well, this guy, I'm still going to give him respect. But when you're in high school or in elementary or middle school and you're teaching these classes, a lot of these students are there because they have to be there. So you really want to be confident when you walk in. Confidence in the high school and the middle school era is critical. And not about, being afraid of the students. You're not going to be afraid of students, but just be confident that, hey, I'm a teacher and I'm here to teach. And if they don't want to learn, I'm going to help them. If they really don't want to learn, then they're just going, I'll do what I can. But I'm confident that I can do this. And that's what you need to be, confident that you can do this. You need a verbally focusing attention. This is how you start your class. You need to have a good tone. I'm going to control the class with my lecture. You don't want to be monotone, boring. You want to avoid questioning phrases. Would you please look this way, everyone? You want to avoid those phrases. Would you please pay attention? No. Okay, class, we're going to focus now. Let's focus. Okay, class, let's listen to this. You want to just focus in there. Hello, everyone. You can say class, folks, everyone, guys. You want to make sure that address the class. Talk to the class. So you want to verbally get the students on track. Also, work on tone of your language. Work on going up and going down. Talking soft and then talking loud when you need to. Don't holler all the time. People are always hollering. Just avoid that. Teacher movement is also critical. You want to move around the class. One thing that I show my student teachers is when you're lecturing, and if you'll do a loop from the back, students do not like it when you teach from behind them. And it makes them nervous. But it makes them nervous in a good way. They're like, oh, okay, the teacher's behind me now. So you definitely want to make sure you have good movement around the classroom. You can also use nonverbal cues. Nonverbal cues, I'm going to back that up real quick. I got a war story. I had a really smart student teacher, top notch, very smart brain. She scored very high on her practice exams. But when it came to teaching, she had the worst movement I've ever seen. She just stood behind the podium, and I would tell her, because you don't want to break someone down when they're student teaching. And when we student teach, we observe them and watch them teach. But I would say, this is what we need to do. This is what we need to do to get better. And I'd say, you really need to move around. And she'd say, yes, sir, I need to move around. Yes, sir. But she never would move around. And I would talk to her a lot, and I'd say, you've got to move around. And for some reason, the podium was her base, and it just made her feel safe being behind that podium. I don't know if it was, it could have been just shyness or lack of, when you're standing in front of a class, you're exposed. People are looking at you from your feet to your head. And if you can hide behind that podium, then it kind of gives you a little bit of, they're not looking at me. But so my advice to any new teacher is put the podium off to the side and teach in front of the class and use the podium for a place to rest your notes. But don't hide behind the podium. Move around. It's sad, but I really think that teacher just won't make it unless she can find her comfort zone. And after a whole semester of student teaching, and she barely passed it, she just never found her comfort in front of the class. And I don't know what it was. But then again, I had other students who were solid C students academically, but when they got in front of the classroom, they were so comfortable and they had so much fun and they really enjoyed it. And so it's that some people are not born to be teachers, but you got to find that comfort in front of there. You have to find that comfort. Transitions are also very important. Just like I just used a transition to transition to transitions. You need to be able to move from point to point. You need to be able to say, okay, we're going to this now. When a teacher moves from a whole class teaching to a lesson, to a homework, to group work, to individuals, to all these transitions, you need to be able to transition that, and classroom planning works very well. This does not mean that your class needs to be 50 minutes of just pure, straight, point. It's okay to take a pause, but you need to make sure that you can transition from point to point. Right now we're doing this, and then you can say, well, this is why we're doing this over here now. Crucial points need to always be addressed, but you need to make sure you transition well. Noise levels. This is up to you. But you need to ask yourself, what is the noise level you are comfortable with teaching that class? Now, some teachers feel that when students are very noisy, that they're losing their control. So you need to find what noise level you're comfortable with. But also you need to find out what noise level you're comfortable with that's not going to seep through the walls and interrupt another class. But think about when 25 to 30 students are grouped together, they're going to get noisy. And you as a teacher need to understand how to manage that. Also, that there's different activities that create more noise. Group work, activities, games will also create more noise. It's also important that students understand and appreciate the difference between outside and classroom space and inside noise. And that's why you always hear inside voice and outside voice. A calm, quieter atmosphere is casual. It feels good. But also when you have a larger class of 30 students, it's harder to get everyone. If everyone starts talking, it can kind of get out of hand. So you need to find the noise level that you want. You need to also monitor this. You need to review noise levels during the first few weeks and see how it's going. Some teachers want no one talking at all. And then whenever they all start talking, they start getting loud. But you need to find that level that you want. Now, this is a very silly topic if you think about it. But when you become a teacher or when you are teaching, find what noise level is good for you. Find out what noise level is good for you. There's some research in there that someone could do. You could find veteran teachers of 10 to 15 years and then use a decimal reading and find out what their noise level is in their classroom and see how loud it is. That'd be very interesting to do. And then you can compare that with new teachers. And also you can compare that with teachers you could have 25 teachers with 10 years of experience and see if there's an average noise level that they use. It wouldn't work for band, but definitely would work for all the other subjects. Let's talk about some just general housekeeping rules. One thing is students coming in late. And some students do come in late. And how are you going to handle that? I always ask my new teachers, I say, what's a tardy? And they go, and they'll say, not being in their seat at one time, or when the bell rings. I'm like, okay, so you need to make that decision up for yourself. And how are you going to handle that? So whenever you set up your classroom and you go, okay, when the tardy bell rings, you're tardy. Okay, well, define a tardy. Are they in their seat or are they not in their seat? See, now I will give you a bit of advice. If you say that they're not in their seat, then it's a tardy. Then that's fine. So a student will say, well, I'm sitting all the way in the corner and I can't make it there. Then you can say, well, I'm going to move you to the seat nearest the door. And they go, okay. But if you say a tardy is when they get to the door, then you're going to have a mass pile up at the door, and then you're going to have to determine if they have their foot in or not. Now, let's talk about students coming in very late, past the tardy bell. So there you are teaching your class, and you've got a good flow going, and a student comes in late. How do you as a teacher handle that? That's a major disruption. Do you stop the student in the middle of your lecture and you say, why are you late? Or do you say, I'll talk to you later about this? Being late is very rude. It's very rude because what you're saying is my time is more important than your time. You're the teacher and I'm going to interrupt you. It's very rude to be late. I'm just going to do a side story. I don't understand people late for church. I don't understand people late for football games or basketball games. It's not like it's a surprise time. Church is every week at the same time, and school is Now, I do understand that emergencies happen, but I've had people tell me I'm late because I'm always late. Well, that's just rude, you know. So, but as a teacher, you may be someone who's never late. So how are you going to handle students who come in late? And that's going to be the opposite of what you are. So you need to figure out how you're going to handle that. What about when a student's always late? How do you handle that? You need to think of this. One thing to do is you can welcome the student. Hello, it's good to see that you're here. You are aware that you're late. Please have a seat. And then continue your class. That's one way you can always do that. That's a very simple way. So a student walks in late for class. Hello, Brenda. How are you doing? You are aware that you're late. Please have a seat. We've already begun the lesson. That way the student knows they're late. It's been identified to the class, and the lesson continues. Another way you can do it is just let them come in. Strong eye contact and a long pause after they sit. And then you can make the statement, where was I? Let's continue. Eye contact. Eye contact can engage attention. But however, too long of a stare, especially in some males, is considered a hostile threat. So be careful with eye contact. Do not stare at someone. But eye contact is very important and very critical. Looking at someone and talking to them shows compassion, it shows confidence, and it shows control. Not looking at someone in the eye shows weakness and fear. You want to avoid unnecessary hostile situations. If a student is upset, they're angry, maybe you don't want to make eye contact with that student. I'll give you an example. If a student just broke up with their girlfriend and they come in and they put their head down and they're upset, maybe you don't want to make eye contact with that student. Maybe you don't want to poke that dog. You know, that dog's mad. You don't want to bother that dog. Leave that student alone. That's up to you. That's a battle that you can choose to fight. Now, if a student comes in upset every day, we've got a problem. Student has a bad day one time, that's fine. Forcing eye contact can create embarrassment. Also, let's think about the students. Let's think about the biological and chemical process that is going on with the student at that time. One thing is the student is going through puberty, and puberty is very emotional to these students. They're also concerned with their face. A lot of them have acne, they have a lot of zits. So looking at a student and then looking at a blemish on them can cause them to be upset and feel bad. So you need to be able to not look at the blemishes. If a student has a bad zit, maybe you don't need to look at that zit. I've had teachers make negative comments about students, like, oh, you got a new haircut, that looks weird. That's inappropriate. Do not embarrass the students. There is something called tactical ignoring. Sometimes you need to have a conscious decision to tactically ignore that situation. And that goes to what I just told you about. When a student is having a bad day, perhaps you don't need to bother that student. Now, if a student needs you to talk to them, then you would want to talk to them. But if a student just got chewed out by a teacher and they come in late, and you know that student just got chewed out by a teacher, and they're going to be late, you don't want to embarrass that student. So be careful and pick your battles. It's called tactical ignoring. If a student passes a note, is that the end of the world? Maybe you should ignore that. If a student laughs in the back and then corrects themselves, and all you give them is a little eye contact, maybe you need to ignore that. Asking the student, what's funny, I demand you tell me what's funny, is not a good example. That is not a good thing. Maybe you need to tactically ignore that, because then they may say something that may hurt your feelings. Wait time is critical. Start working on pauses. Wait time is whenever you teach something and you stop. You pause. You ask a question and you pause. Honey, where do you want to go eat tonight? Let them think, and then let them give an answer. Pausing is very important. Now, I'm not saying you need to ask one of your students. I was using that as examples of relationship. But whenever you're talking to your wife, or you're talking to your husband, pausing is very important. It's the same thing in school. When you're teaching, pausing and asking questions and waiting is very important. It's called wait time. Make sure you use it. Punishments. Now, one thing you want to do is you can also follow up. Now, I'm going to pause here. I'm going to go back. You can follow up with students after class. So if students are having trouble and you want to table that discussion, you can do that at a later time. There are some warnings on this. Remember, students have back-to-back classes, and whenever you try to talk to a student after class, they may have to be late for another class. You may just want to have a brief chat with them. Also, being alone with a student is never a good idea. Being alone with the student is never a good idea. Also, you want to focus specifically on the student's behavior. Hey, Billy, I notice that you're late for class a lot. Can we elaborate on this? What's going on? Is there anything I can do to make you not be late? Do you understand what situations this is putting me in? So you can also mirror the situation, they call it. You can say, this is what it looks like when you come in late. When you disrupt class, this is what it looks like. So you can, but you want to keep that very short. And then you can ask them about some goals. What do you want to get out of this class? What do you want to do to become a better student? Of course, if the student doesn't respond to these, then you can just break the conversation off, make some notes about it, and then you may want to help address that with their parents. So about consequences. Consequences are very important when we're looking at teaching. And these are also known as punishments. One thing we can always do is a timeout. In fact, that's kind of like what prison is. Prison is an adult timeout. You're not good at society, you're going to put you in timeout. If you really think about the whole adulthood and crimes and everything, some of the first thing they do is you're going to be they have financial penalties towards you. They say, okay, here's your financial penalty. You sped, here's a $200 fine. You did this, here's a $1,000 fine. Well, then after that doesn't work, they put you in timeout. Okay, you're in prison for 6 months. This is your timeout. Well, we can do this we don't want to put people in prison, obviously, but you can have timeouts. You can have timeouts that are not what you think they are. You're thinking like putting a kid in the corner. You can say, you can have a class of 30 students, and the student's acting up, and they're disrupting. You say, Billy, just put your head down. All right? I'm going to teach class. Just put your head down. Or, Billy, just no more. No more from you. Please don't talk. Please don't contribute to class for the rest of the period. You've been disrupting too much. I don't want to hear from you. It's good. You're done. Simple as that. And that's a timeout. Now, I had a student, I'll give you an example. I didn't put the students in the corner because I didn't want them standing in the corner. And these were seniors and juniors and sophomores. So you're talking about 16 to 18 years of age. So I had a student who always acted up. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to put you in the hallway because the principal doesn't like that. I said, here's what I'm going to do. I said, I'm going to sit you in the corner. I said, your seat, your desk is going to be in the corner. Not facing the corner, just off to the corner. And he was like, okay, fine. So I said, just move your seat to the corner. You do not need to participate in class. You're good. You just sit back there. And he's like, fine. So I would teach the class, and he would sit back there, and he would say something, and I'd be like, no. You're not participating. You're just sitting there. Well, after 2 days, he walked up to me, and he said, what do I need to do to get back into class? And I said, just participate. And he said, sounds good to me. So we moved his seat back, and he was happy. So that was just an effective way for me to have it where I could put someone over there and say, you're not, even though you're sitting in the class, and you can hear the class and you can listen to the lecture and learn from it, hopefully, you can't participate. So that was a real simple way to do a timeout. Now, I also had, you can also send the students to ISS and in-school suspension, stuff like that, but you don't really want to do that. You just want to be able to manage some of the consequences. Now, there are some consequences that you have to have besides a timeout. Now, you need to have two types of consequences, non-negotiable and negotiable. Non-negotiable means you did this, this is your punishment. I'm referring you to the office. You are getting a writing assignment. You're getting additional homework. You are getting something. This is the way it is. This is non-negotiable. Now, negotiable could be, look, we've had this issue several times. I need to talk to your parents. This is non-negotiable. Now, if you're good for the rest of the week, when I talk to them, I will leave out that you skipped Friday. So that would be a negotiable. So you need to have, that's fine. It's fine to negotiate your consequences, but you need to have non-negotiable. This is it. We're not negotiating this. You are going to be punished. Or negotiable, we need to talk about what we need to do to fix this. It's not just a mere punishment. It's not a mere punishment. It needs to have a degree of seriousness. Now, there are extreme circumstances. There are circumstances where you will need to punish a child. Let's talk about corporal punishment and paddling. Now, paddling is up to you and your school district. Now, paddling is an extreme punishment where you, it's called corporal punishment, where you actually physically harm someone as punishment. Now, let's go into the legal aspect of it. You are allowed to do corporal punishment in the state of Mississippi if your school district allows you to do it. Now, each school district will also have rules and bylaws and procedures that you need to do to follow that. Some of these can be, for example, you have to have a witness with you. A student cannot exceed 6 licks a day. You have to, and all these different little rules and checklists. You have to fill out a form. Now, would I paddle? No, I would not paddle. I would not paddle a student because of the following reason. One is paddling is easy for students to take as a punishment. Will you take Saturday detention or will you take 3 licks? I'll take 3 licks. Because some of the students are like, well, that's not really much of a punishment. I'll just take 3 licks and go home. So I don't really agree with how easy it is for paddling. And therefore, teachers to say, okay, I'm going to have to make my paddling be more of a stronger punishment. So to do that, they have to paddle harder. So think about that. So if I give a student, if I say, you've got Saturday detention, they go, oh, I don't like that. And if I say, you've got Saturday detention, they say, all right, no problem. I say, okay, you got 2 Saturday detentions. Well, I've made my punishment harder by adding more days. But let's say I say, you've got 3 licks. And they go, okay. Well, then they act up again. Well, you've got 6 licks. I can't do that. The school won't let me exceed 5 licks in a day. So I go, okay, you got 5 licks. They go, okay. So I go, okay, well, the next time you got 5 licks. Okay. I can't make my punishment harder unless I go, well, I'm going to wear them out. See, there's the issue. Is paddling, you can't get tougher. You can just get harder, and that's going to hurt, and that physically will leave marks. The second thing, and the most important thing, is when you physically hit a child, you're opening yourself up to legal liability. So let's think about, you are there on the stand. You've been sued. A student says you hit him in the kidneys. So they put you on the stand and they're going to say, okay, Mr. Smith, who taught you how to paddle? And you'll say, no one did. I learned on my own, because I'm not going to teach anyone how to paddle. No college is going to teach you how to paddle. And you say, well, I just learned how to paddle. They can say, so you've been practicing? I'm like, sure. They said, well, who'd you practice on? Well, I practiced on 20 students. They said, well, how do you know you're good at it? When did you know you were good at it? And they're really going to make you look like an idiot. because you have no training on paddling. You've just been practicing on students that are lined up. So it's just going to look bad. Then they're going to call me on the stand, and they're going to say, okay, Dr. Allen, did you teach this person? I'm like, well, sure. I said, what'd you say about paddling? I told them not to paddle. And that's it. So paddling opens yourselves up, and also it just doesn't give you the degree of punishment. It's up to you. Look at the state, look at your county, look at your degree, and all that. Now, there are some other extreme circumstances where you need to physically restrain a student. This is very rare. But sometimes a student will act up, or there will be a fight where a teacher has to use physical force to restrain a student. Now, what are you legally able to do? You're legally able to put your hands on a student if they need to be physically restrained from harming another student or harming themselves. And you can use enough force to control the situation without harming or physically destroying the child, pretty much. So let's talk about a fight and how to break up a fight. And that would be an extreme circumstance. Students do get in fights. They get in fights a lot, especially in schools. They get in fights usually over boyfriends and girlfriends and items such as that. But when students do get in fights, it's very violent. Now, without showing, there's videos on YouTube. You can type in student fight, and you can watch as many fights as you want to. Fights, generally, within 3 or 4 blows, end up on the ground. Girl fights become very violent. And the more girl fights I watch, the more I see clinging in on hair and yanking and trying to pull hair out. And that's very violent and it's very powerful. Boys usually throw a lot of punches and they try to knock people out. The issue is, as a teacher, how are you going to get in the middle of that? And I would recommend not getting in the middle of that. Now, there's all kinds of self-defense classes you can take, and they'll teach you how to break up a fight. But let me talk to you about what legally you are supposed to do to break up a fight as a school teacher. And this is under extreme circumstance classroom management. Now, many of y'all will disagree with this, but I'm going to tell you the law. You are legally, as an educator, if a fight breaks out, you are supposed to do the following. Inform the office or security staff and protect any students under your control. And that's it. So if you've got 2 students fighting in the hallway, you should push the panic button, inform the office, and then close your door, thus protecting the students in your classroom. If a fight breaks out in your classroom, you should push the panic button, notify the office, and tell all the other students to get out of the classroom. Now, the students won't, because they're going to want to watch the fight. But you can be over there saying, stop it, get out. Now, you can watch all kinds of YouTube videos of teachers trying to break up fights. And you'll notice 2 things. One, when a teacher breaks up a fight, they open themselves up to being on the news. And the second thing is, I saw a recent news study that said a fight broke out in like Atlanta or something. And the parent said, well, the teacher didn't break it up. And the school district said, it is our policy that a teacher does not have to break up a fight. And that is the policy of all the school districts in the state of Mississippi or the United States. Teachers do not have to physically break up fights. I have broken up my share of fights. I would not recommend breaking up any fights because breaking up fights puts yourself into a legal mess. But more importantly, you're not going to get sued breaking up a fight, but you can get hurt. You can get hurt very easily trying to break up fights. And I have seen some of the worst fights I broke up were girls. We had fights where girls were, they will not stop. And it's pretty bad. And I remember one of the worst fights I ever broke up was 2 girls got in a fight. They were 16 years of age, I would say 17. And one of them, we finally got her separated from the other girl. And it was about 3 of us, 3 grown men, pulling her off of the girl. And I remember we had the girl under control, and I was behind her. And she was so angry, she started scratching our legs and just trying to fight us to get to that girl. So finally, we had to hold her down, and she started scratching my leg really bad. And I just put my hands on her face, and that usually freaks people out. I put my hands on her eyes, and she had her eyes closed, and she was still fighting. And I whispered to her, and I said, I'll blind you. And that was the only way that I could stop her, was whenever all of a sudden she froze then, because she realized, this guy's, he's serious. I wasn't going to do it, obviously, but touching someone's eyes is very scary when you touch somebody. And I just touched her. I said, you got, because she was killing me. I was like, you got to quit. I said, I'll blind you. And then she stopped. But it took 3 grown men to hold her down. And that's how bad it was. Guy fights. But then, you separate from that. And you're like, what have I done? You're physically shot. You're shaking. You're tired. So I would definitely encourage you not to break up fights. But under extreme circumstances, you can grab a student. You can physically restrain them. Now, some students also have medical conditions. They'll have seizures. You have to hold them. You have to take care. Now, if a student has a seizure, you need to research that. You don't hold them down. You just need to try to move away some of the desk. But you'll see that your school district will teach you that. But obviously, you need to make sure that under extreme circumstances, putting your hands on a student might not be the best thing in that situation. Now, you can have detention. Some teachers do that. I will give you a word of warning on detention. Many new student teachers will put students in detention and say, you're going to go to detention. Well, that's usually not the best thing to do, because if you put them in detention, then you've got to watch them. So telling a student you have after-school detention and you've got to stay there, well, that abuses your day. So you may not want to put that as a punishment if you've got to do it. Now, if your school has a detention that teachers can refer them to, that might be something you may want to implore. When I went to school, they had a detention, and teachers could put students in detention. When I taught, we had an ISS, and we had a Saturday detention, but teachers could not put students in ISS for Saturday detention. It had to be done by the principal, so you had to refer students to the principal, and the principal had to do it, and if he didn't want to do it, that would be different. Now, with that, let me give you a word of caution. When you refer students to the office, when you write up an office referral, what that means is you are telling the school district that you cannot handle this student, that classroom management-wise, you can't do this. So when you send a referral to the office, that means whatever punishment the office chooses, it is up to them. So you can't question that. If you send a kid to the office and they come back with a warning, you can't say that's not fair, because that's when the principal will say, I can do what I want to do. You can handle your discipline in your class, and you have. So what I found out was I just quit sending the kids to the office. I just handled my own discipline. I put kids in the corner and sitting in the corner, and I just handled my discipline, and I never had to send kids to the office. I had kids say, I want to go to the office. I'm like, no. I said, just sit there, put your head down. Just put your head down. You're not participating today. Just put your head down. I want to go to the office. No. Well, I'm leaving. No, don't leave. Don't stay here. Well, I'm leaving. So then when they finally left and they walked out, I got them for skipping class because I didn't tell them to leave. So find your own classroom management. And another question you need to ask is, if you refer to a kid to detention, what if they don't go? What happens then? The last thing, which is becoming huge, is bullying. Bullying has become a disturbing thing throughout our education system because bullying is going beyond school. We now have Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all these other things. And people are now continuing that bullying online through text messages, so the bullying never stops. When you suspect bullying, you need to report it because it can lead to bad situations. Students are committing suicide. Students are making poor choices. They're doing bad things. You need to watch out for bullying. Now, one of the worst culprits of bullying are teachers themselves. You don't need to pick on students. Even if you think you're joking, picking on students is not a good idea. So be careful with your conversations that you have with students. My bit of advice is this. Be the joke. Don't be the jokester. What that means is when students, don't be a fool, but don't be the class clown. But when students want, it's okay for them every now and then to laugh at you. You say, look, y'all, I know I got a big head. It's hard for me to buy hats. I know I need a haircut. Look at me. I look real shaggy. It's okay to make those comments about yourself, but you don't want to say that about, you need to get a haircut. Because everybody, so you don't want to pick on students. It's okay to pick on yourself. Like, hey, y'all, I'm sorry. I just did, I spilled coffee on my shirt. Look at me. I did the best I could. Look at that. So you don't want to pick on students. You don't want to pick on yourself, but that's the best advice I can give you is be kind of the jokester on yourself. You know, you're going to eat a lot at school. That lunchroom food you're going to get addicted to, and you spill some ketchup on your shirt. When you're in high school, you spill some ketchup on your shirt, it's the end of the world. When you're a teacher, you spill some ketchup on your shirt, it's just, whatever, because you're not trying to impress anybody. So all of a sudden, you stand up in the class, you go, sorry, y'all, I got some ketchup on my shirt, it's no big deal. But, look at me, hopefully one day I'll learn how to eat. So you just want to kind of do that. Now, that's just a brief lecture on classroom management. Is looking at my clock about to 51 minutes. So I just wanted to talk to you about classroom management and just give you some general ideas of it. And that's that.